Hi, it's me JD and welcome back to my channel. In this video, I will be showcasing some watercolor slimline cards. Slimline cards, also known as tall cards, are super trendy right now. You've probably seen a lot of metal dies and designs for these tall cards. Tall cards are definitely the popular paper craft right now. Yet another win for everything tall. So sit back, subscribe, and we'll jump right into the first card design. I'm going to start off these watercolor slimline cards by taping everything down first. And since I'm going to be doing watercoloring and I know I want to make more than one card since all of my supplies are out, I figured why not just tape one giant sheet of watercolor paper down and then just tape it off so I have 3 sections of paper crafts to work with. I'll be doing some wet on wet watercolor technique with liquid watercolors. These ones are from Dr. P.H. Martin. Again, I am not a watercolor expert. I'm just figuring this out as I go and playing, but there are some things I've learned that could possibly help you along your watercolor journey or your card making journey. So as you saw, I just dipped my paintbrush into some of that liquid watercolor, and now I'm going back and forth with my round brush trying to get a gradient effect. And I think this is called a graded wash. I'm using multiple colors to create this graded wash in pink, in orange, and yellow. I'm just slowly moving that paint upward, the orange paint upward, to try to get it to blend with that pink. These colors of liquid watercolor are also in the radiant line, so they're very, very bright, very, very vivid. And since they're going to be cards, I'm not too worried about the colors fading over time. You know, it's not meant to be framed and in the sun at all. It's just a nice and pretty greeting card that should last, the average lifespan of a greeting card. I'll just finish putting on this yellow and then I will let that dry while I work on the second card. I'm just putting down some more water, making sure that my watercolor cardstock is to a nice glossy finish with that water. The water will help move my color more. Since I'm doing these cards, these watercolor cards, I'm not sure how vibrant I want them to be yet. So I'm just laying down some light color at first, and then as it dries, I can build and add more and make them more vibrant if I want it to be. For this second card, I just want it to be a green gradient. So I'm pretty much using the same color, just fading it to white towards the bottom. And finally, for the third card, while I let that second card dry, I'm putting down some more water. And then I'll just do a 2-color gradient for the final card. It's going to be this really vivid tropical blue turquoisey color, which I think is my favorite out of the set I have. And I'm going to blend that towards the middle. And then while that's building up, I'm going to go towards the bottom. My water actually dried up from when I first applied it, so I'm just going to go back in and add some more. And then I'll drop down this purple color, which is probably my second favorite out of this liquid watercolor set. And I'm just going side to side and dipping it in some clean water every time I change colors and trying to work those 2 colors towards each other. What I love about liquid watercolor is that the color is already mixed for me. I can pretty much see what color I'm going to get as I lay down the paint. It just depends how intense I want that color to be. So, sometimes I'll add a few drops of water to help dilute that color and make it really, really light. Here, as my first 2 cards have dried already, I'm going to go back in with some more water so I can lay more color down. And I am really digging doing 3 cards at once with watercolor when I tape it all down, because it just saves so much time, waiting in between for it to dry. This way, I'm already working on another card and all my supplies are out. So this is definitely a repeat card making technique for me in the future. There's just also something about watercolor painting that is just so relaxing and so satisfying. Like when I was doing this, I just turned on some music and just started painting. It didn't matter if I was good. It didn't matter if I was, making the right stroke. It was just very soothing to do this. Here, that purple color was just a little too intense for me, so I'm just gonna blot some off with a dry paper towel. This is now the second layer of watercolor paint I'm applying. Second or third, I've lost count. But I didn't mind. Like I said, I just wanted to play with these liquid watercolors. I'm bringing more color into my card fronts. I realized I really wanted these to be really vivid and vibrant, so that's why I'm putting down more and more color. And now it's time for the peel reveal. And it is always just so satisfying when I do this. And there's no surprise, no trickery here, folks. I'm just using plain old painter's tape, the blue kind you can get anywhere. I also didn't really measure out my card fronts accurately, so that's why there's a skinny side on the left and a big old fat side on the right. But it doesn't matter, all of these card fronts are the proper size for a slimline card. Of course, I waited for all of these to be dry, completely dry, before I started taking that tape off. And since it is dry, I can now trim it down to size. I kind of like the white border, so as I'm trimming down all of these pieces, I decided to keep it. I have an envelope punch board, so if I need to customize the size of the envelope later, I can certainly do that to accommodate the sizes of these slimline card fronts. The inspiration for these tropical looking cards were these tropical looking dies from Altenew. I've got some flowers, some leaves. It's just very summery. It's very beachy. That's where my headspace is. That's where I want to be right now. So if I can't be there physically, I will be there through my handmade cards. I'm just die cutting some extra pieces. I've already done the majority of the die cutting off camera to save you some time. And I'm pulling up their die cutting guide, their layering guide for die cuts, and just assembling all of my hibiscuses. Hibiscuses? Is that the plural for hibiscus? I don't know. We're gonna go with it. When you first die cut everything in a layering die set, like, you're a little intimidated, not gonna lie. But with a layering guide, it all comes together easy peasy, and it's much easier than lining up a layering stamp, I gotta tell ya. Like, this leaf stamp is probably the skinniest die set I've ever seen, but I was able to lay that down with no problem. And now I'm just laying down my leaves that I cut, trying to get the perfect placement, and then I'll play around with the placement of my hibiscuses and see what I like best there, and I'll just glue that down with some liquid adhesive. The same goes for my green card front. I wanted this one to be all leaves, very modern looking, and so I even put the leaves in a gradient pattern just like the background. And for the final card, I wanted to stamp and cut, and these little peony blossoms were just so cute. They were calling to me. I used some Altenew inks to stamp them in with the help of a MISTI stamping tool. Layering them was super easy, and just even without the stamping tool, the center of this stamp is pretty easy to line up, and even if you mess up, you can't really tell. And after die cutting those out, I laid them on my third card front and just put liquid adhesive to glue these down into place. I wanted it to look like a floating lei. Once all of these were placed, I'm going to just flip this over and cut off that little excess peony blossom, and I'll use that extra piece to finish off my lei at the bottom. And now that all of my die cuts have been glued and settled and mostly dry, I'm going to go back and just trim off all of the excess cardstock off of all of these card fronts. I'm telling you, I had some Hawaiian/island music blasting, and I was in the zone. If you don't know, we actually did live in Hawaii for about 3.5 years, so these cards are so near and dear to me. They just took me back to some great memories. Now to finish these cards off, I'm going to ink 2 of them in Versamark ink and then pour some white embossing powder. And then I'm gonna do this in batches to save time, so I'll ink in Versamark ink and pour some white embossing powder over that. I was feeling very brave. That's why I did this without a stamping tool, but it all worked out because thankfully I stamped straight, go figure, with an acrylic block. I feel like the more you stamp, the more you improve upon your eyeballing skills. Like the art of eyeballing, it's a true art form. All right, now that my heat gun is nice and hot, I'm gonna go and just melt all this powder down. For that green card, I did it on some dark green cardstock. Working in batches is a great time saver when you're making multiple cards. That way I just melted all of the powder at once. For the green card sentiment, I just popped that sentiment on some foam tape, and now I'll adhere that for some dimension for that card. And now I'm going to add some clear drops because I feel like these tropical, vibrant ocean kind of cards need some clear drops. It's just like the cherry on top. I'm bringing a little bit of bling and sparkle to the islands. Okay, so now that all of my cards are dry, I'm going to adhere them to actual cards because I want them to be ready anytime I want to give them out or send them out. And these came together so beautifully. I'm so happy with how I use those liquid watercolors. This is definitely a technique I will use in the future. And I want to thank you guys so much for watching. So tell me, do you like slimline cards? Is this going to be the future of card making? You know, slimline versus A2? Which do you prefer?